Hello, wonderful. This is Sarah, and I'm here with Kate Mansfield, who I brought in after an emergency situation that I had in my own life. And last week, my husband and I were at dinner, and I overheard this couple talking, and they were talking about how they were going to discipline kids and how they unwinded after work and where they wanted to camp long term and retirement. And I thought, man, that is a really intense conversation. Have they been dating a long time? And are they looking to decide if they're going to take the next step? Well, the female went to the bathroom, and I was sitting right beside them. And so I looked at the guy and I said, hey, are you trying to decide if you're getting married or not? And he said, oh, it's a first date. And I went, oh no. That made so much sense of why the female felt so uncomfortable, looked so uncomfortable. And Kate and I have known each other in these circles for a while. And I know that she is great at bringing the fun back into dating, as well as the communication and the joy. Hey, Kate, how are you?
I'm really well. Thank you for asking me on. I'm so excited.
Okay, and I go way back, and so I had just have such respect for her and her work. Tell people about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a dating coach. I work mainly with women, but with men as well sometimes. And I have a program really helping people to, as you said, learn how to date, have fun while they're dating, with a view, yes, to finding that ideal partner, but actually really leaning into the dating process, because I think it's such an amazing skill set and we overlook it. I think so many people want to jump from date one into marriage, right? And they don't want to deal with all the dating stuff. And, because it can be challenging, it can be triggering. And I think we need to be in a good space to be able to date, right, in ourselves. And so I really help people to kind of prepare themselves for that and then go out there and do it and, enjoy it.
3 pieces: prepare themselves for that, go out and actually do it, and enjoy it. And people don't think about those 3 steps. Then they get tripped up on one of them so often, right?
Yes, exactly. For sure.
Now, you talked about dating as a spiritual journey, which I loved. Can you emphasize that a bit?
Yeah. So, in terms of spiritual work, I think, again, for me, it's about action, right? We can sit and meditate for 10 hours a day. And often clients come to me really frustrated with their spiritual practice because they're kind of going through the motions, but it's a little bit like kind of lip service. Do you know what I mean? In some ways, like there's a disconnect between the head and the heart. And what I find is that actually often there's some kind of unresolved issue from the past where they're not like understanding what self-love really is, right? They're not understanding what self-compassion and forgiveness really is. And for me, that's been really at the core of my own spiritual journey and my own personal journey in this, particularly in this area. Because I do, it's such a cliche, but I do really know and believe that if you don't really love yourself, you're not going to attract someone who loves you. Not really, not in an unconditional, healthy way. And I think, again, we get very confused about self-love. Like it's not just bubble baths and buying yourself flowers. For me, it's actually, a lot of it is about boundaries. It's about making really tough decisions. It's about like, that guy is so hot and I'm so drawn to him and everything in me is wanting to connect with him, but it's a no. You know what I mean? Because I'm going to put myself first. So really putting ourselves first, especially as women, I think, because we are so conditioned to please and serve and in many ways abandon ourselves, right? Learning how to stop abandoning ourselves and really, really, what does it mean? If I come first in everything I do in my life, does that mean I'm a bad person? Does that make me selfish? Absolutely not. I think it's the opposite. And so for me, that is the kind of, if someone's able to do that, for me, that's a kind of a sign of like spiritual, high level spiritual place to be in, if that makes sense. And for me, it's really about connection. It's about heart connection. It's about authenticity. It's about expressing ourselves openly and having a purpose, feeling able to speak our truth, and we can do it kindly, we don't have to, it doesn't make us a bad person. So yeah.
And I want to dive in on that because so many of us, we have some type of spiritual or religious background that says, if you want to be a good person, your love means you no longer count, right? Or you have to
Yeah.
give up everything, or you have to sacrifice everything. And what you're saying in the spiritual journey of the dating process, which I agree with, that part of your spiritual journey can be saying, how can I find love and count at the same time?
Absolutely. Yes. And I think commitment to truth is so important above everything else. Like my personal truth. And, stretching ourselves from a mindset perspective into the belief set that we can have what we want and we can get our needs met and we can also meet someone else's needs. It's a reciprocal thing. And I think, again, for so many women, and this was very much my story historically, was just over giving, over investing, over delivering, but not really being aware of how much resentment I was carrying, that I wasn't getting what I wanted back, and how much anger actually I had towards men for not meeting my needs. But then when I look back, it's like, oh my God, but I never once asked for my needs to be met. And also, ultimately, I was often going to the butcher's to buy bread, right? And it's like, this guy does not sell bread. He's a ribeye guy. Like, there's no bread here for sale, so attracted to unavailable people, and because I was unavailable, so that whole journey, I think, is like, I don't see how you can really crack that and recover from that and move through that without some kind of spiritual aspect, and that doesn't have to be organized religion for me. It can just be a higher power, it can be the universe, it can be, even in my program, just the group, it can be your inner self, it can be anything, I think. But there is, for me, it's essential to have a belief in something bigger that is, for the highest good, and then for me to be able to connect my highest self in with that in order to show up for myself, show up for another person, and to be able to receive, as well. Because, yeah, I think we underestimate the pleasure other people having giving to us, especially men, right, as women. And to block that, I think, is really sad. And yeah, it's just tragedy to me. I think the amount of women I see who just can't receive anything and are, in a way, depriving men from being able to feel like the hero and to feel good and to give to them, and that's really sad.
And then we end up getting a guy who doesn't give anything to us, and then end up in my program, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
but let's talk about that best version of you. You talked about kind of an anxious version of like going into dating and being a very spiritually aligned, confident, open to giving and receiving version of someone going into dating. How do women know which version they are?
I think it's kind of simple. I mean, in terms of, if you are dating right now and you're finding yourself getting like attached to people without knowing them, invested without knowing them, if you are feeling really anxious about, has he replied to my message, which to some extent is a human thing, but getting really attached to outcome and with someone that you've never met, right? So going into fantasy is a big one, I think, for a lot of women, and then creating this relationship or this person, projecting who you want this person to be in your mind, and then feeling so devastated, if someone doesn't reply, or taking things really, really personally, I think is an indication that there's definitely some inner work to do in terms of spiritual growth, in terms of self-esteem and confidence. And a lot of my clients, I think, are confused about the difference between confidence and self-esteem, right? Which I love to make.
Love that conversation. Yeah, go for it. Yes.
Because so many of my clients are very high achieving on the surface, using in a way their confidence as a heart wall, as a way to separate themselves and to, be in a position of power, be validated, all that stuff, which is very masculine as well. And, to me, that's confidence, but self-esteem is always lacking, I think, in that, because again, if you're dating and you're just not getting the results you want, you're attracting guys who are ghosting, disappearing, not showing up. For me, that's a flag that maybe there's some inner work to do around your self-esteem, right? Not your confidence. So it's just such a great distinction, I think.
And part of self-esteem, I'm curious about this, matching self-esteem with the belief that at some point I'm confident and I feel good that I'm going to be in a healthy relationship. Like, I don't know when it's going to be there. It's that tug and pull of the balance. Like, it may not be this guy that I went out with today who has to text me back. But to know that at some point in your life, strengthening that belief that at some point something's going to work out. Do you help people with that?
Absolutely. And this comes up a lot on my intake sessions, like when I'm talking to clients who are making that decision about, are they going to invest and are they going to join my program? And because often the big fear is, well, is this going to work for me, right?
Yeah.
How do I know it's going to work? And I know I've seen all these videos of other people, but I'm not them. And this is my biggest fear. I might be the one person that this doesn't work for. And actually what I say to them is, look, it's pretty much guaranteed at some point in your life, you're going to meet another guy and you're going to have another intimate relationship, right, with him. And so this isn't about, is this going to work or not right now? This is about really helping you to make sure that when that does happen, which it is going to happen, that you have the self-esteem, you're in the right place, you have the skills and the knowledge and the foundation and this, everything you need in order to not repeat these patterns that you have in the past, and really not to sabotage that, right? Because again, I think it's so easy to point the finger at all the men in your history, but actually when we start kind of doing an inventory on ourselves and seeing all those subtle but really powerful ways that maybe we've sabotaged good relationships, or just the part we play in not taking ownership of our needs and our wants and sharing ourselves and withholding, all those things that feel like small things actually can really make or break a relationship, in my view. So,
well, and in my audience, the self-ownership usually ends up being, there was a huge swarm of red flags that I ignored and did not act in integrity to myself. Sometimes that, I know for my audience in particular, that has to be what we own. Whoa, I filled in the blanks. I pretended if he was this much nice and this much dangerous, I flipped the switch and made it this much dangerous in my head and this much nice.
yes.
And that we have to own that too, right? That has to be, yeah,
absolutely. For everything in that regard, I think the more we can own how we abandon ourselves, how we don't honor ourselves, how we don't respect ourselves, and then of course men treat us that way because we teach men how to treat us, I think, in my view. And like I said, doing some mixed coaching work with men and women is so fascinating. Actually, on the last call we did, a lot of the women were sort of complaining and saying they had resentment about men in general, that men in general they felt didn't meet their needs and weren't interested in meeting a woman's needs. And actually all the guys on the call were like, no, but you don't get it. Like, you've got to tell us what they are. Like, we can't read your mind, right? And the male brain is different from the female brain. So you actually have to spell this shit out to us, right? And give us a map. And like, if you gave me a map of how this is how to make you happy, that would make me so happy, right? To be able to have this kind of like blueprint for you, that the woman I'm dating. So I don't have to be on eggshells and creep around and get it wrong and second guess and end up so confused because I don't know what's going on, right? And you seem really angry and I'm like scratching my head going.
I did an interview yesterday, and that was exactly what I said. They kind of said, what's your number one healthy relationship tip? And I said, I do not do guessing games. With my husband, he's in like contracts and finance and all this kind of stuff. So he likes boxes, right? He likes to check off the box. And it's like, hey, this is what my needs and expectations are. What are your needs and expectations? Cool. Let's work on that. That's it. No drama, no guessing games. But love, we can't define love as giving up on ourselves and then making you guess.
No.
I think a lot of women that's what they end up doing.
I think so. And, coming back to this idea of making dating fun.
Yeah.
Right. Who's doing that is not a fun woman to date. Sorry, ladies. Just calling you out.
A fun woman to date if it's like, my agenda is that we get married, that we build, that pressure. You mentioned that too. That can you say what Guy said about that?
I think this is really common, and we can get so confused as women about, I need to have a clear vision. And we've just now been speaking about telling men what your needs are, telling them what your desires are and all of that. So that's all good. But, we need to learn how to do that about the small things on a day-to-day basis. And of course, when we get later down the road into a dating scenario, we're talking about exclusivity, commitment. Of course, we need to sort of like figure out, are we on the same page? Do we have the same vision? Do you want to move to Australia and I want to move to New York? Okay, it's not going to work, or whatever, right? So we do need to figure out those non-negotiables. But in the early stages of dating, I think we need to, as women, really learn like a skill set around non-attachment to outcome and being really lighthearted, being really fun. And that doesn't mean overdoing it, like just jumping into bed to be fun to the guy. I mean, just in a genuine sense, learning to play and learning to tap into that kind of childlike energy, which is actually quite spontaneous, which is really authentic, which is very feminine, and kind of evokes this feeling, I think, in men of magnetism, where they're drawn into you because it's so light and refreshing. And I think what I've learned about men is that they do have a deep fear of losing their freedom, right? So I think in the differences between men and women, in many ways, it is a bit stacked. Like in general, I think men fear losing their freedom, women want security. So that's the kind of mismatch that we're dealing with in the dating world, especially online. But I think if women can just learn to trust and relax and just dial that side of things down a little bit in the beginning and give men like a genuinely fun experience of them in a lighthearted sense, it's just so much more appealing to a man, and it's going to kind of like inspire him to want to chase you, inspire him to want to call you for a second date, as opposed to you coming in with that heavy-handed approach, which is like, I want to have kids in 2 years and they need to be this many kids, and how much do you earn and what's your job, tick, 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 tick. Where the guys that I was working with recently said that actually they felt really upset and very unseen and unheard by women. And they felt often in the dating scene, women weren't fun. They were like super serious, which kind of killed the whole vibes of romance and fun for them. But also that they just felt used in a way, like this woman is just seeing me as in a way, like a meal ticket to marriage, to tick off her agenda of her timeline for where her life needs to be and all this stuff. And for guys, like they said, if I ever meet a woman who is not on that, like on me and on that in the first few dates, it's so refreshing. Like that is definitely a woman I'm going to be calling back. And it's not to say that that guy doesn't want those things as well, but he wants you to want them with him personally, right? Because you know him, because you like who he is, because, and that takes a few months at least to get to know somebody at that level.
Well, that was one of the biggest fears in my personal relationship with my husband now. He knew I was marriage minded, right? And that was quite honestly a big conversation. It was like, no, I like you like the best of all the people, versus I really want to get married, and that has to be very two different conversations. But he had dated a lot, and there was a lot of women who had tried to use him in that way. So his red flags were up with me.
Yes.
And that was a communication hoop that I had to make very clear, because it's like, no, I get tired of everyone except for you. No, you're my most fun, right? And that piece of like truly choosing him rather than choosing marriage.
Exactly. And you've nailed it there, I think, in that respect, because I do think, again, so for so many of us as women, we get very confused about men, and the stories we're fed about men in just in our culture, in the media, that men don't have feelings, they're not emotional, they don't have needs, they don't want to get married, they, all this stuff that they're going to kind of, every man we meet is out just to get us into bed and that's all he wants. And actually that's a very, very tiny minority of men out there on the dating scene now. I think, even Tinder has a bad rap. I think most guys on Tinder now actually are looking for a relationship. And I do think even kind of post-COVID, and I mean, we're still in the, in the ends of it, but I do think men have had a big shift around wanting deeper connection, and generally people have, but I think men really have woken up. And so I think there's never been a better time to date online, actually. I think there's way more kind of high quality people online. I think it's become much more normal. You can, if you do it right, you get the right help, internal help, and kind of getting some dating skills locked down. You can definitely have huge fun on dating apps, and make some great connections, make friends with people, to start with, like expand your social group, because for every guy he has maybe 10 to 15 great guy friends, right? And if you don't hit it, go to dinner with him and his mates, and you're just getting to widen your circle. I think if you're a single woman and you're really serious about finding a high quality man, and you're quite specific about what you're looking for, that's great. So don't drop your standards, but it's just have fun along the way, keep it lighthearted along the way, bring some fun, be open-minded, open-hearted, and what we bring is what we get. I believe that 100%. So if we're coming in with suspicion and seriousness and kind of like an agenda, we're going to get that back, I guess, from guys, and that's not fun for sure.
No. So what is it? I want to say again, make sure everyone heard her. If you are interested in finding a high quality individual, think about using dating apps to widen your social circle, right? Not like, is he the guy? Is he the guy? That is a really high pressure situation to put both on the date and on yourself.
Absolutely. And I think it really kills it for men, because they do feel that pressure, I think. I mean, it works both ways round. And I did a lot of stuff on apps myself, and I've experienced that the other way around, and it's horrible. It's like, God, get away from me.
That was that guy. This is the first date, and a very good looking couple, and it was the guy, and he had this like agenda that he was going through, and the girl seemed so uncomfortable. Yeah. And when I saw her later, it was like, I just want to get out of here. Great looking guy, beautiful girl. On the surface, it looked like a great match. And I was like, whoa, what's going on with this conversation? The energy around it just felt so pressure. And I do toxic relationship recovery. I am the go-to girl for difficult conversations. I can handle that. And it felt like a bad energy vibe to me. It felt like pressure to me. And I'm used to being in that world of hard conversations. Sure. So
yes, no.
Bad vibes. How do you make dating fun so that you don't burn out? I hear so many women, they feel burned out on the dating process.
Yeah, it can be that way. And again, I mean, I think it's kind of a little and often, just as on a practical level, I think consistency is really important. Again, just thinking about energy and thinking about rhythm and thinking about, I think a pattern I've noticed with lots of women is they go on, they spend like a couple of weeks just doing it so full on hardcore, like in messaging, it takes over their world, and then they burn out. So I say to my clients, like, just do 10 minutes every morning, 10 minutes every evening, and make sure you're just getting this very nice flow of consistency where you're making sure that good quality conversations are carrying on, and then other ones are getting knocked off, and so that you're following up with people. And then the other thing is, I think, just get on the phone like really quickly. I think a couple of days of messaging backwards and forwards, if you establish a couple of non-negotiable things that you're, on paper, you're a good match, just have a phone call, get on a video call, like move things along. And for women, I think, don't be scared of like instigating that, because I know women think, oh my God, I can't ask, I can't instigate. I'm like, absolutely, just do it. Be proactive. It's not masculine energy. It's not chasing. What's chasing for me is a pattern. Like if you're chasing after a guy who's not interested, who's not responding, who's not messaging you back, yeah, sure, don't get into that. But if a guy's reciprocating, and then it's fine for women, I think, to reach out and be proactive and just be clear. I like you, let's jump on a call. I don't want to spend days messaging, I don't have time for that. And I think again, men really appreciate that, in terms of honesty. And
well, I'm also obsessed with this idea. I did a whole series with male dating coaches on the podcast, and the guys who tend to be overly confident or making up for something, or trying to just get you in bed, like that short percent, are going to do all the work at the start. So you don't have to be vulnerable. You don't have to put yourself out there. Obviously he wants me. But the nicer guys maybe not have had a date. Maybe they haven't had a dating coach. Maybe they're great, wonderful men who are looking for a stable, healthy relationship, but they don't have a dating coach. So expecting them to know everything to do is kind of unfair as enlightened women who study this work. Absolutely. Would you agree with
100%. And I think, again, doing the mixed coaching with the guys, a lot of them have just issues around confidence and self-esteem, like the women in my program, which is why they are with a dating coach and in that environment. But yeah, they all say to us, like, most men out there are not, you know, like you said, they're not in a self-development program. They're really insecure. They have all the same anxieties that you have. They don't want to get vulnerable. And actually, the reality is, like you said, some of the best quality guys in that sense, who may be a bit introverted or whatever, it doesn't, you know, obviously we don't want a partner who's got serious issues that are unresolved, but we're just talking about average guys who, even maybe, you know, for the older lot of people, maybe they've been divorced and maybe they've been married for 20 years, they haven't dated for 20, 30 years, right? So I think as women, we need to help them out, you know, give them like very clear signals, or be really direct, and just give men opportunities to, like, you know, lessen the risk for them of rejection, because I think it's the thing we all fear the most, right? Is being rejected. And so if we can kind of like lay that foundation and just create those opportunities for men and make it easier for them, give them a pathway in, you know, then they'll take it, you know what I mean? And I do think we have to approach it differently, without this very hard line, well, he has to pursue me, he has to come with this, that, and the other, because
The toxic people are more willing to pursue you. I am quite confident in that.
Yeah.
So that's can be, not everyone who pursues you, that's a bad sign. But watch out for the guys who maybe aren't as direct. You know, those oftentimes, from male dating coaches that I've talked to, and from my own experience, those are often the better catches, because they want to be respectful of you.
Yes.
The toxic guys are like, no, I want to own you. I want to control you. I want to get you. You know, the nice guys are like, oh, I want to be respectful. I don't want to bother you. So they need more of a direct approach.
I think so. And they need encouragement, and they need us to help them out, you know, in terms of just, you know, I like you, I think you're nice. And, you know, giving men compliments, I think, again, is something we don't do enough. It's underrated. Yeah. It's a great approach with apps. You know, complimenting men on what they're wearing, so it's not too direct. We don't want to get too heavily flirtatious, but just like, oh my god, you look great in that shirt, or I love your hat, or, you know, commenting on something they're wearing. I think, you know, men love that, because they don't get that very much, you know. And it's again, it's a lovely way to signal, like, you're cute, you know, I like you, without kind of being too high risk or on the nose ourselves. Do you know what I mean? Because we don't have to really massively put ourselves out there to get on a date. I think it's just approaching it in your mind as, I'm building a friendship, can really help to lower the stakes. And just even imagining, like, if this was a female, like, I'm just networking, I'm just kind of, you know, like, you wouldn't feel or think twice about probably giving that woman a compliment, or saying, hey, like, I really like your profile, let's go for a coffee. That's all it is. Because, you know, with apps, I think the strange thing is, ultimately it's a blind date, right? Even though you've got photos. And I think it's such a great approach to think of the first date almost as a pre-date, in my mind, which actually is a much better approach, I think, because it's such a lower level of expectation and pressure, where it's almost like, let's just meet for coffee, let's just meet for 30 minutes and just see if there's a connection. And then almost like, if you go on a date after that, that for me in my mind, that is date one, where it's like, okay, then we're into dating territory now, because we know we like each other, there's a genuine connection. Does that make sense?
I love that. So phone, Zoom, pre-date, date.
Yes, I think so. Because, as we all know, like, someone's picture is often not who it is.
Yes.
In the good sense or the bad sense. Often it's like one extreme or the other. It's like, oh my god, who is this guy? Or, you know. So and I think, again, guys have it hard. Like, it can be very expensive for guys doing online dating. If you think it from their point of view, women get really offended, like, oh, on the first date he didn't buy me dinner, he didn't. And it's like, okay, but he never met you, like, maybe he doesn't like
you. Let's go there, okay? Because that's what I see. It's like, oh, you know, we've had one date, and there's like, oh, this expectation of, like, he treats me as if we've been together 20 years, or he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
So unfair. That definitely would build that resentment in dating. Like, he doesn't know you.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't know you. He doesn't know if he's going to like you better. We don't know it from text messages. He doesn't know you. So for him to kind of my clients have some of a dating template. So it's like, okay, you already know these are your go-to outfits. So you don't have to spend all this mental energy on it. If he has some type of template to do well, to date well, that doesn't mean anything about your individuality or specialness or connection. It's just kind of a process.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's just too much to ask for guys to be on the dating scene paying for every woman's meals. Like I said, it's a blind date. I know lots of guys who say, well, this woman showed up and she was like 10 years older and 20 pounds heavier than her pictures. And it's not all about what we look like, but there is a kind of a thing of, it's nice if the person in the photo is more or less who shows up. Do you know what I mean?
Honest. That's just honest. That's not fair. That's not fair.
It's not fair. And then she was pissed because I didn't want to buy her dinner. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's too much. It's like you said, give everybody a chance just to have a minute of like, this is just a friend meeting for coffee. And then, really on that meeting, like, is there chemistry? Is there a spark? Do we have similar value? Half an hour is, I think, long enough just to know, like, do I actually want to go on a date with this person? Who they are, not their picture, not their profile, but actually who this person sitting in front of me right now. And then
let's talk about some conversation topics within that 30 minutes or on that Zoom call. If you're not grilling them about every bad relationship of their past.
Yes.
Insert pause so everyone can think about that. Then what are some fun conversation topics?
So I like to do with my clients like a mixture of what I call kind of emotional conversations and logical conversation questions, sorry. So, asking just kind of random fun questions like, what irritates you about people? And tell me 3 things that make you feel pure joy, right?
Yeah.
These kind of questions. What is your biggest blind spot, or like, what is your weakness? I think how somebody answers questions that are asking them to self-reflect is really great to see their response to that. Are they defensive? Are they self-aware? That kind of stuff. And then, just those kind of fun questions, like mixing them up with, kind of stuff, favorite things, favorite movies, favorite food, what makes you feel good. I think stuff around feelings and what lights you up, as opposed to where do you see yourself in 5 years, I think is such a nicer way of asking somebody, finding out who somebody is. Like what makes you get up out of bed in the morning and, feel good about your day. What is one thing you want to change about yourself? These kind of questions that are kind of quite deep in a way, but also can be fun to answer. And then if you're sprinkling that in with, movies, books, things, kind of common interests, asking questions about, how do you get on with your mother is always a good thing to know about somebody, family stuff. I think it's just important, like I said, to mix them up. So you've got some emotionally deep kind of questions, and then some kind of more fun, light-hearted, surface level stuff in the mix. So again, it feels not one thing or the other. It doesn't feel really heavy, or it doesn't feel too surface level. Does that make sense? And
I love that. And even your heavy questions were things like, is this person introspective? Not what was that person's trauma? What was that person's, even within because we've been through, my audience has been through very heavy things. So even within the heavy conversation, we're talking like, 60% heavy, not into the 100%.
Yes.
Heavy.
And I think it's the same with learning not to overshare or undershare, because that can be really confusing as well.
Okay, so I see women oversharing and then saying things like, well, they just need to know who I am to see if they can like love me. And it's like, this is like the first 30 minutes you've like interacted with this person ever.
Yeah.
The expectation that let's put all this out there to see if they can love me through it is
at that stage,
it's a lot.
Too much, I think. I think so. I mean, I think we should really be focusing on having fun, bringing humor in is really important. Like I said, playing, being playful. One of the things that has been absolutely, life-changing for me in my journey around that has been doing things like joining a choir, singing, doing improvisation classes. That is such a fantastic thing to do. Really challenging for me because you've got to just be on the spot, and like put yourself out there in a group. But actually those groups are always so loving, and so it's such a healing thing to do, to just learn to access that childlike side of yourself. Because I think people who've had a lot of trauma as well, especially, which is very much my story, like recovering from that, really learning to tap into and allowing your inner child out to play, right? Who's been so frightened, so trapped, and so beaten down and squashed, let that little girl inside. Like if you can show that to a guy on a first date in a very lighthearted, positive way, that is so much better than kind of oversharing a load of trauma, because I think it's just not the right time yet. And of course he should know those things and love you for that later, let it slow it down, let that come out later on. I think first, second, third dates, we're really focusing on kind of just connecting and creating a fun emotional experience for yourself and that person, right? Because that's what love and dating should be.
Fun emotional experience for yourself and that person. I want to make sure that did not get skipped over for our listeners. That is the point of the early stages of dating.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Not locking them in, not as outcome driven, because if you get that outcome driven, it's going to feel like an uphill battle and a disappointment.
Absolutely. And it's really just going to backfire. I think the more we need that, the further away it gets from us. That's the unfortunate reality of it, and that spiritual development that we talked about earlier, I think is really learning to fill ourselves up, to let go, to connect to something bigger than ourselves as the source of our meeting our own needs. And, we can't meet all of our own needs, but then we need to take responsibility for that with friendship, with spiritual practice, like I said, with having fun, doing creative things that light us up and bring us joy. So we have stuff like that to talk about on a date, right? Because if all you do is work and gym, it's just like, oh my God, you're going to run out of shit to talk about quite quickly.
That's why I said, talk about dating brands. And I said, if your brand is hard work and mama, we got to figure out something else. Like that cannot be
right. It's dry. That doesn't sound fun to hang out with,
No. Kate, tell people where they can find more about you.
For sure, yeah. So my website is just katemansfield.com, and there's a ton of information. There's a masterclass on there, and if anyone wants to book a call, they can do that there. So yeah, it's been amazing. I could talk to you all day. I'm sure you.
I know, we go way back. This isn't our first. Many times the people I'm on the podcast, it's my first conversation with them. So Kate and we've got a few years under our belt.
It's always really amazing to talk to you, and love the shared stuff that we have, and amazing to be able to help people and give back. So amazing work you're doing as well. So big respect, and really honored to be here and sharing it.
Oh, thank you. I look forward to connecting much more in the future. Can you give people your number one, 1 minute message to the world, whether it be about dating or something else? If everyone in the world knew this one thing, what would you want them to know?
I think the fastest way to find what you really want is finding it within yourself first, and offering that to everyone you go on a date with. I think it's that, really. Yeah.
I love it. And so many women are flashing through my mind right now,
Like be who you want to date, and be a match to your vision, truly a match. That's what I love it. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you, Kate, for helping us on our journey to becoming toxic person proof. You guys check out her website.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you.